If you've been enjoying Halo Infinite just as much as me, the game has now gone gold, and in this video, we're going to teach you 10 tips on how to get better at Halo Infinite's multiplayer. If you enjoy weapon comparisons, weapon breakdowns, and tips and tricks for Halo Infinite, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers, and also click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. We'll be posting extra gameplay content over there as well. At tip number 10, and it's probably an obvious one, is play for the power weapons or the power abilities. It doesn't matter which game mode you're playing, you do want to know where the power weapons and the abilities spawn in. You'll learn this from time of playing the game, or you can take it one step further, and before you start actually playing, you can go into a private match and just look around and see where all the power weapons, vehicles, and everything spawns in, and that way you know where to go at the start of an actual game when you queue into an actual public lobby. Now, the reason for actually doing this is power weapons are what they say they are, which is more powerful than the weapons you start with. But on top of that, you do get extra abilities that you can carry as well, such as getting extra shield, or having the ability to actually be invisible during the game. Now that brings me on into tip number 9, and that is learn how to use all of the abilities inside Halo Infinite. Now if you run over an ability, if you press R1 or if you press RT on your controller, I'm not too sure what it is on keyboard and mouse, but you can activate certain abilities that you pick up throughout the game. So these include grapple hooks, thrusters, the ability to go invisible, or even to get extra shield. And all of these abilities, as you can imagine, will help you gain the advantage in the gunfight, whether it's to help you with your movement, whether it's to help you last a lot longer in a gunfight. All of these will help depending on your playstyle. You also need to figure out which ones you like more than others, because some are slightly better. But if you want a full breakdown of a guide of how all of these abilities actually work, I'll leave a link to one of our previous videos at the end of this one, and you can check that out. It explains and teaches you how to use each ability. At tip number 8 is practice your movement abilities. Now, movement is a massive key to winning gunfights inside Halo Infinite, and it's probably one of the main reasons I win most of the gunfights I do inside this game, because it's clear that not a lot of people have actually mastered movement mechanics in this game. Now, what you want to make sure you're doing is make sure you're jumping when you're in gunfights is going to make it harder for the enemy to track you. Also, when you're entering into rooms, instead of just running straight in, try and slide into the room, and that way people won't expect you coming in at a lower angle, especially since you can't go prone or anything like that in this game. Sliding is actually a really cool mechanic, and it gives you a bit of a movement speed boost. On top of that, when you're in the middle of a gunfight, make sure you're strafing left and right. This is going to make it harder for the enemies to actually land shots on you, and you need to be able to track your target whilst you're doing this though to make it fully effective. So if you're just moving and jumping around and missing all your shots, it's really not going to be as good as if you were landing your shots. So if you do want to see a full movement guide, don't forget to leave a comment down below, and also like this video and just let us know that you want to see that, and we'll be sure to make a movement guide video. This brings me on into tip number 7, and you need to make sure your aim is spot on. That way you can win way more gunfights, because you will be landing way more shots than your opponents. And if you can do this whilst you're using the movement mechanics, you'll definitely be a much better player inside Halo Infinite. Now, we've got a full aim guide on the channel already. I'll leave it linked at the end of this video as well if you want to check that out. And it's going to give you the best settings to get the best possible aim. As you can see in the gameplay, my aim is pretty good. And on top of that, it's going to give you some extra tips so you can predict where enemy players are coming from. At tip number 6, it's using the right weapon for the right situation. Now, I'll give you an example of the two starting weapons. That's the sidekick pistol and the MA40 assault rifle. Now, the MA40 assault rifle does have a lot of side-to-side spread or weapon bloom when it comes to the recoil of this gun, and therefore you should only be using this gun at close to medium range. If you're in a long-range gunfight, I would actually highly recommend using the sidekick pistol instead, and that's because it's way more accurate, and it's also easier to fire a single-fire weapon at longer ranges. Now, of course, if you do run out of ammo with your MA40 at close range, you can switch to your pistol. I'm not saying don't switch to the weapon at all. The amount of times I've bet people with a sidekick pistol at a long range just because they're sitting there using an MA40 is absolutely ridiculous, so make sure you're using the right weapon at the right range. Tip number 5 is all about knowing when to take a gunfight or when not to take a gunfight, or even when to leave one when you're halfway through a gunfight, because the amount of times people just stand there and want to keep firing their weapon for absolutely no reason whatsoever is pretty stupid if you ask me. But if you see 2 enemy players running towards you, make sure you leave that situation, try and find a better angle, try and get some high ground, and then take the gunfight. Or for example, if you know you're getting shot at first and your health is going down rapidly because you're just getting hammered from like 3 different angles, make sure you leave that situation, get your health and armor back up, and then you can take a gunfight later on. Tip number 4 is quite an easy one, and that is just use your grenades, man. Like, people have a thing about not wanting to actually throw their grenades mid gunfight for some reason, and in this game you do get a ton of health, so you don't die like instantly as if it was like Call of Duty or a different game, for example. But grenades are absolutely amazing for taking down enemy armor. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to get a ton of kills using your grenade because that's not the case and that's not what they're used for. But they definitely will break the enemy armor and give you some easy gunfights, especially if you know there's a couple of enemies camping inside a room. Make sure you throw those grenades, and throw both if you have to, because it doesn't really matter how many grenades you use. You'll always find a ton more lying around on dead bodies or the rest of the map. I also use grenades a lot to escape from situations, and that also goes for some of the abilities in the game as well. I just want to quickly touch on this. For example, if I know I'm taking tons of damage, I'll throw a couple of grenades down just to make a distraction or to damage the enemy players a little bit and give me enough time to actually escape that situation. On top of that, you could use your abilities to do the same thing, so you can grapple away from a situation because you're going to be moving a lot quicker and it's going to be harder for them to track you if you're on low health. Tip number 3 is footstep audio. You always want to be listening out for footsteps for enemy players. Gladly, inside Halo Infinite, footstep audio is actually really good in this game. Now, that's only if a player is sprinting, jumping, or doing quite a drastic movement. But if they're actually slow walking, you won't hear the enemy player, and that is why most of the time you die to active camo players. It's not because the active camo silences your footsteps, it's because that only works if you're moving slowly. So that is why sometimes you die from those players you don't even see coming, because they're actually slow walking a lot. So it's something to keep in mind. If you're pulling off a flank, make sure you try and slow walk, but also make sure you listen out for enemy footsteps. If you're not using a headset when you're playing a first-person shooter, I highly recommend doing that, as it will help you out a ton. Tip number 2 is something that I don't see a lot of people actually talk about in this game, and that is using cover. Now, coming from a background of playing Call of Duty, Battlefield, or any of those other games, it's a lot easier to use cover in those games than it is inside Halo Infinite, and that is because you get a ton more health in this game, and on top of that, you can't really go prone or go crouching all that often. But if you are behind cover, make sure you are jiggle peeking or shouldering. It can be called different things, but it allows you to see if enemy players are coming for you, and it allows you to be prepared to either stay behind cover if you need to, or take that gunfight. And the amount of 2v1 gunfights I've won using this technique is absolutely ridiculous. Now, continuing on this topic of cover, is not necessarily just directly in front of you you need to cover yourself from, especially if an enemy's in front of you, but sometimes there could be enemies shooting at you from multiple lines of sight, so you do need to narrow yourself down to one line of sight when you're taking gunfights. It's going to allow you to isolate gunfights a lot easier and maybe even kill 2 enemies at a time. And that is so, for example, if an enemy's shooting you from the left and there's a player shooting directly in front of you, try and put some cover between one of those enemies and yourself, so you can at least focus on one gunfight, and then you can move on to taking the next gunfight after that. Last and but not least, at tip number 1, you want to be making sure you're playing as a team. Now, repeat after me: playing as a team. The amount of times I see people running around by themselves, this includes myself as well, taking on 2v1 gunfights in this game is almost near impossible considering how long it takes to actually kill players in this game. Now, you can do it if you're a really good player, but the easiest way to do it is by playing as a team, and mainly having one extra player with you. So playing maybe as a duo will definitely help you get a lot more kills and just do better overall, whether you're playing an objective-based game mode or whether you're just playing Slayer and you just want to get a lot of kills. Regardless, playing as a duo will definitely help a ton, but overall, if you can get a squad together, that's always going to be the best case scenario for you getting the most wins as well as the most kills. So there we have it. Those are 10 tips that will help you improve instantly when it comes to Halo Infinite's multiplayer. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. If you want to see that movement video, don't forget to leave this video a like and comment down below as well. subscribe to our second channel, and also don't forget to check out some of the videos that you'll be seeing on the screen just now. They'll also help you with more in-depth information about what we went over in this video, and thank you very much for watching.